I'll go ahead and call us to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Marty, can you take roll?
Mary Jo Rosmanowski. Mary Jo Radcliffe. Here. Tom Epps.
Here.
Troy Webb.
Here.
Nick Helsted.
Here.
Ann Emer. Here. Brad Dobbs.
Here. And was this meeting properly noticed?
Yes, it was.
All right, so I'm going to move that we move item 6.1, which is our middle school social studies team, to be the next item on the agenda because we have some visitors here this evening.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, so we'll move right into item 6.1.
My name is Tony Berger. I am the PLC leader for the Social Studies Department at the middle school. Tonight we're going to talk a little bit about our focus on purpose, the kinds of things that we're doing. I brought some guests with me to talk a little bit too, and certainly if you have questions, please stop me at any time if you want to ask questions. So we're going to talk a little bit about, well, first I'll introduce our department members. So Jess Young teaches 6th grade, and Jacob Rockow is our 7th grade social studies teacher, and you maybe know Coach Yurko, Adam Yurkowski is our 8th grade teacher. So we're excited. They're all new to our building this year, all come with experience, a great wealth of experience, and just really excited to have them and hope that they stick around with us for a while. I'd like to next talk a little bit about our sequence. So the middle school, 6th grade is grounded in the ancient civilizations. So I'm going to have each one of them talk a little bit about an activity in their class today. So they study all the ancient civilizations all the way from the Stone Age and going through. Jess and I just got done doing a unit on ancient China. 7th grade is world cultures and First Nations. Jacob will talk a little bit, but he has spent the first trimester and a half talking about First Nations in Canada and in the United States, and certainly Wisconsin with an emphasis on the Ho-Chunk Nation. And finally, in 8th grade, Adam teaches United States history that goes from prehistory all the way through the Civil War. In 9th grade, students pick up the second half of U.S. history. We went to that a few years ago because we feel like it gives us a chance to go more in depth with United States history. As you know, we're working on standards right now. We're working towards standards-based grading. We've been doing this work in the district for probably about 5 years. Really at the middle school, it's been about 2 years of this work. So we took the Wisconsin State Social Studies Standards and looked at our courses. And we sat down and we began to talk about which of the standards fits best in which of the courses. And when we sat down and finally looked, we found 9 standards that we really felt all 3 grade levels could work toward. So we, in addition, also have spiraled the skills. So as I show you in a second, we look at some of the standards, I'll talk about that. So the skills might be a little more basic in 6th grade, supported in 7th grade, and we want them to be at that tier level by the time that they leave 8th grade. Each of the courses have their own additional 2 to 3 standards that they're working on because we are 3 different areas of social studies, so there are going to be some differences.
Let me ask a quick question.
Yes.
When I read that, I thought, okay, you looked at all the state standards and you picked 9 that you were going to incorporate.
Correct.
Who does all the others? Is there a way that you make sure that that's covered?
That's a really good question. Yes, I mean, everything that's in the standards, we're going to hit on in social studies. Maybe not just in the middle school, some of the behavioral standards.
So that is
right,
covered
so when
all
I
the way
taught
through.
psych, we did those. These are just the ones that, when we go to standards-based grading next year, these are the 9 that we're going to assess kids on.
Okay.
And I'll explain in just a second how we picked them and how we decided where to put them.
Okay.
Okay, so the next slide. This is our 9 standards. So the 4 of us sat down over the course of the first 2 months of school, and we picked out what are those 9 standards. You can see we went with 3 history standards, 3 inquiry standards, a geography, an econ, and a political science standard. If you look on the right, you'll see that the standards in social studies are not content related, they're skill based. And if you read through them, you're going to see a lot about writing. So writing, very important in the social studies, and things like learning to develop a claim, to support a claim, to research, how to know a good source, a good primary and secondary source, how to communicate and critique challenges. So if you look on the third column over a unit assessed, all of the 3 classes assess that standard in that unit. So all 3 classes start the year, Unit 1, with Geography 2. Use regions in the world to analyze the role of population shifts in why places change over time. The reason that we did it that way is, although we don't teach any courses in common, when we're each done with the first unit, we can take our summative tests, because we've all had a summative test on that first unit and first standard, and we can compare how our students did. It's really the only way with having, again, just single people teach it that we have the ability to really do that. We also did some actual work today on our formative assessments, putting those together also in the same units. So hopefully by the time we finish what is about 8 or 9 units, depending on the class, our students walk out of here with all of those standards, not just proficient, but we want them advanced. Any questions on those standards at all? Okay. We've also started looking for a new source. None of the levels have a textbook right now, so they've been going for a few years, either using old textbooks that we had, maybe have a classroom set, but we didn't have anything that was tied to the standards. So we're looking at what's called Discovery Education Textbook. So it's an online textbook. We're gonna pilot it this year. We're looking at purchase this spring. So about 6 weeks now, we've been using it in our classes. It's a wonderful resource. It is completely aligned to the Wisconsin state standards. It is what we call a high quality source. So you might hear English talk about using my perspectives. You might hear science amplified. This is our high quality source. So we know that everything that's in here is going to be targeted perfectly for the middle school level that we want and need it to do. So it's got readings, charts, all kinds of different things in there. And again, they're specific to the lesson and the unit and the age group. If we go to the next slide, this is just a little bit of what the format is. So this happens to be a lesson from the Constitution on the legislative branch. So what it does is it breaks each one into chapters, and chapters are broken into sections. So this is section 4.3, a more perfect union. So this is, how does the Constitution reflect major principles of American democracy? It includes several aspects of a lesson. It's going to have some text here, and I didn't know how many slides I would put, so I just did this one, but there's a comparison chart if you want to use it. There's a reading, and as you go across from engage to explore, you get more resources. So there's everything here from a model lesson that tells you all the standards, the Wisconsin state standards it's aligned to. Evaluate is going to be where our assessments are as well, if we choose to use those. Over on the right, the kids don't have any access unless we give it to them. So this isn't a thing that they just pop up and they can scroll through. We have to assign it to them. So in all the classes, they all have accounts set up. Again, we can change the language. In some cases, we can change reading levels as well. We really like this resource. I think all 3 of them who have been using it, I've just more been helping, would say that so far they're very satisfied. In addition, it does have lots of other subjects besides social studies, and every teacher and every student in the middle school has an account, which it also has mystery science, has all kinds of things we can use, current events, things that we can use for our target times, and things that we can use for enrichment with our students that are already meeting the standards. So we're very excited about this source, and we're really hoping that we do end up adopting it as our social studies source.
Are the students able to access that from home then?
Yes, so a couple things. I mean, our Chromebook students don't take their Chromebooks home. We have them at school. So, I mean, I think they can take their Chromebook home if
But
they
there
have
aren't assignments
permission.
that they have to do using that at home.
we would do those in class, or the student could check out the Chromebook if they have approval and take home and work on it. But again, they only see what we want them to see, what we assign. And we're still learning about this source, and really good.
And Tony, I know that, you know, you don't have textbooks, and textbooks astronomical costs.
Correct.
Going to a program, a tech book like this, is it a comparable cost, or is it?
Well, there's somebody here who could
Yeah, it's a
answer
huge
that.
savings. Like this right now is free, so that's a nice number.
I like it.
So that's my financial input for the evening. And so it's cheaper than it would be adoption with books.
Okay.
But that's not the why it wasn't considered, even though that's always a good sign to be thinking about costs. It's just because it's really high value. And ed reports where it gives us a lot of information about different textbooks. They don't have the social studies piece of it. So.
And honestly, I was just going to share that I think that's why we are much slower to adopt something in social studies, because those were the last set of state standards that really got dug into. And so there's just been this lot of waiting until some decisions were made at the state level so that other resources could be generated and improved. So.
If you do feel like you want to take a closer look, I would be happy to sit down with any of you.
There will have to be a formal adoption process at some point.
Of course,
Yeah.
but if you wanted to look a little bit more, have somebody walk through it with you, I'd be happy to do that.
Are you able to see like user statistics, like how many times a page has been accessed, or how much time you spend on
Well,
page?
They might be able to answer that better than I.
No, but you can see who's completed which task was assigned. So there's data that way.
Okay.
But as far as like who's viewed the page, I haven't been able to see that.
Okay.
But you can see if they completed the assignment.
Right. And then the assumption is obviously they view the page if they completed it.
Yep. Okay. For sure. Okay, well, let's move on. I'm going to have each of the teachers talk a little bit about their class and share an activity that they've done with you. So Jess Young is up first, and she's going to talk about hieroglyphic activity they did.
Thank you. Hi, so thank you for having us tonight. And first I wanted to draw your attention to the Common Core standard that I was focusing on in this activity, which is claims using evidence to support reasoning. And so this was just the first step in going into this inquiry claim, because it is quite a big claim and it took quite a bit of activities and different things for the students to understand this. But my purpose overall was to help students understand why the Egyptian scribes, or the people who wrote in hieroglyphics, why they converted from this form of writing of hieroglyphics to another form of writing, which was a very much simpler form of writing, which was later transformed into different writings that were much simpler. And so what I wanted the students to understand and get from this was hieroglyphics was not something that could be used over long periods of time. And so while doing this activity, what I had the students do was I gave them the alphabet of hieroglyphics, and I asked the students to write their name in it. And as some of the students were writing their name, and it might just seem like a very simple activity, they were able to understand that this was not a practical use of writing, because every time they needed to make a letter such as L, they had to draw a picture of a lion. And some of my students had quite a few L's in their names. And so some of the comments that I heard from across over 100 students was, no wonder why they invented this other form of writing, because every time they needed to write this letter, they had to make a picture. And they decided, after talking with small groups, that it was not practical, because if they needed to write down laws for every single city, it would take forever, and by the time that those laws were written down, they probably were changed. And so while doing this very fun, hands-on, engaging activity, the students were able to understand that this form of writing was not practical, and this actually led to us talking later about the Rosetta Stone and how different forms of writing were able to be converted so that we can understand what hieroglyphics are today. And so even though it may be a little simple, the students really enjoyed this activity, and they were able to take these hieroglyphic clay home to their family and show them what they did and show them what their name was. Thank you. Next up will be Jacob Recco with 7th grade.
Thank you. Like Tony said, the focus this year so far has been on the indigenous tribes of North America, starting way up with the Inuit in the Arctic and working our way south. We recently finished a unit on the Plateau, Great Basin, and Southwest tribal groups. The way this is constructed, different regions of what is the United States today is separated mostly by their main geographic feature into different tribal groups, because tribes that lived in similar geographic areas mostly developed similar cultures. So it's an easy way to divide up the groups to teach about them. At the end of this last unit on the Plateau, the Great Basin, and the Southwest, this is the area where a lot of trade took place amongst the early people of the Americas. Trade moving from further south in Mexico and South America through the Southwest, Plateau, the Great Basin, up north all the way to Canada. We found artifacts doing archaeological digs that have been identified as gold from Mexico all the way up in Canada and polar bear claws down in Mexico. So we were talking about the trade. And then she was much more efficient than me in providing the standard on her slide, but we were using this to talk about supply and demand and how trade works. So what I did with them, you can see in a few slides here, a bunch of different paper. Every student started with $250 of fake money and different numbers of different resources. And every single class, I teach 6 sections, every section had a different list, different resources were worth a different number of points. So, for example, one resource that they got was corn. Every student started with 15 units of corn. In one class, corn at the end might have been worth 2 points. In another class, it was worth 5 points. So the demand was different. The goal was to have as many points at the end of this as they could. So this took place over the course of about a week. And I told them you can trade in social studies in the hallway, outside of class, lunch, recess. They got really into it. Some kids, I took a long time to count everything up, but some kids traded as many as 40 times with their classmates. One student ended the activity with 5.5 times more points than he started with. Some students, as is inevitable in trade, lost points from their resource total. But it was really a way to teach them how trade works, how supply and demand works, and using the native cultures as a guide for that. Going forward from here, we're just finishing up the tribal groups of the modern United States, moving further south into Mexico and South America, and then we'll be jumping over, after we finish the Americas, talking about tribal groups in Africa as well for the rest of the year. That is what we are doing in 7th grade, a fun activity. In case anyone's wondering what's going on here, part of the trade activity was an auction in which I was auctioning off more resources and I was the auctioneer. Some students got very enthusiastic and I got a few minor complaints from other teachers about the noise level, but I think they enjoyed it very much. So next will be Adam Yurkowski talking about 8th grade.
Excuse me, sir. I do have stuff in my PowerPoint. It's not just a blank slide. You're good. Okay. One thing I want to just stress before I get into the activity that we just recently did in 8th grade. I really pride myself on the social studies content. I love social studies. I love history, psychology. All of it's a great resource to have for life, but I'm huge on open-mindedness and inclusion within my classroom. I want to provide a safe space for all my students and build those connections that gets them to buy into what we're doing in the classroom. So that's a huge part of my why as a teacher and my philosophy, because not every kid's going to really like history like I do. That's just the reality. But if you get them to buy in and treat them with kindness and respect, they buy in a lot more. Recently, we did a Socratic seminar on the Bill of Rights. We circled the kids up, much like you see here, with the desks and made them face each other. They were uncomfortable. We had to pry them along to get them to talk the first few days of the seminar, but eventually they opened up. Does everyone know how a Socratic seminar works? So students were provided a question about the Bill of Rights, a specific amendment within the first 10 amendments of the Bill of Rights. And then they had to research their question and answer their question and provide their examples to their classmates. And then it was an open forum. They could discuss the question, they could ask questions about the question and about the research of the individual students. like I said, they were not enthusiastic at the start, but once the first few days really kicked off, they became a lot more comfortable pushing each other. Inquiring is a huge focus. This would also fit with standard 3 of inquiry in this example and activity. And again, there's really good discussion, more discussion than I thought they were initially capable of. With my background as a high school teacher before this is my 6th year, this is my 1st year as a middle school teacher, they wowed me with how good they did with the discussion, pushing each other, inquiring along the way. So I was really pleasantly surprised with how the activity went. We're going to move forward as the year progresses towards the Civil War, like Mr. Berger alluded to, and we're going to continue with the focus on interpreting resources, primary sources, secondary sources, and then having them build their thoughts and claims based on hardcore evidence through their research. One thing I want to compliment my team on, and Mr. Berger certainly as well, Mr. Nortman, I come from a district where students would get to the high school and they were not prepared for a lot of what we had to ask them to do. We're doing that here with this team, and I think we're really pushing kids to open up and push their boundaries a little bit, all while providing a safe space for our learners. So I'm really happy to be a part of this team.
Thank you, Adam. I do want to talk a little bit about another area that is very important, and that's our culturally responsive practice work. This is work that's been going on in this district years, way before I was here. But I came here in '94 and '97, we really took a look at how were we teaching Ho-Chunk history and culture, First Nations, and it was at that point that we kind of blew it all up and started from scratch. Over the years, we have, I think in 2010, we sat down with elders from the Ho-Chunk Nation. We went through every single class, every source in the library, every lesson that we taught. And we talked about, is this an appropriate place where we should be talking about Ho-Chunk history? Is this source appropriate? And we ended up reclassifying some sources, and the nation bought us new sources too. That relationship, thankfully, has continued with, having 3 new teachers, all with some experience, but at the same time coming in and not necessarily having a lot of experience with First Nations. It's a tough learning curve right away, but they have all rolled up their sleeves and worked so hard in this area. I'm so proud of them, and this is something that I have a lot of passion on. I've spoke several times for the district and for myself at different places talking about Ho-Chunk history, Act 31, which is our mandate, of course, by the state to teach Native American culture. Paul Rickon, who was forever a member of our social studies department at the high school, and Eli Young Thunder, who also have all been people that have embraced this work. The last thing I want to talk about is something that's new that we're really excited about. Just here in the last about 6-7 weeks, we have expanded the high school's Wakshik-Washek, or Ho-Chunk Students Club, which has existed for a long time at the high school, also into the middle school. And I'm really happy that Haas and Sheena and London are here because they co-advise it along with Eli and myself. So we want all of our students to feel like they have a place, right, to feel connected. And maybe the last couple of weeks show how important that is and how much we need this right now. And we had a Weka or a story night on February 8th, and it was fantastic. I think we had over 150 people. We had done it 3 years ago before COVID, and maybe we had 40 people. So Tony Pettibone prepared a fantastic meal. We were able to break bread, eat a meal together, and then we went to the LMC and were able to hear some elders tell some stories while snow was on the ground, and it was a wonderful night. I think everybody had a great time. We will be meeting bi-monthly. We're meeting again actually this Thursday. The direction of the club will not be determined by myself, but it will be determined by the students. They will decide. And one of the first things that we've talked about is a mural activity. We do have one mural right now. We want to have more. We want to fill up more of that space. We want our students to see themselves present. We're also, we had the community night last week, which was a fantastic outpouring of support. And we had some of our kids that were able to come and serve hot chocolate and cookies, and it was a lot of fun. We're going to be doing a heritage fair with the high school. So first, we're actually going to run a practice, I think, at GET High School with the high school students, and hopefully some of the middle school students also taking part in that. And then we're going to do it, we're going to repeat it again at the middle school. That might end up actually being April instead of March. So very excited about this. If you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them now. If there's anything else you're thinking of.
I'm just excited to see how much hands-on opportunity the kids are getting instead of just a lecture format. It sounds like you're really engaging children. And that's how they learn, and that's how they connect and remember it. So that's really good to see.
Well, Adam said it. This is a fantastic group. We just got to keep them all. We can't let them go anywhere. I have the utmost respect for them. And I think a lot of the credit goes to Mr. Nortman for cultivating a culture where teachers can take chances and feel supported. So if you do have other questions, if you want to see more about that source, please let me know. Email me up with my phone number up there. I'd be happy to sit down with anyone at any time.
Thanks.
You got it.
Before we move on, I just wanted to recognize, because you guys may or may not stay for the whole night, the choice is entirely yours, but just wanted to acknowledge that the board has heard some good news out of the middle school previously this fall, and their Dr. Sullivan and Mr. Nortman are going to highlight some more good news, and it is 100% a credit to the staff that is there. And I just have to tell you that I hear nothing but positive about such a large group of new staff, but what makes me giggle is when they come in here for new teacher in service, they are giggling and cackling and racing up the stairs, and they make me laugh every time I spend time with them. And let's be honest, that's when kids learn best, and clearly that's when adults thrive too, when they get to work in that
Brad
environment.
Lobenstein and I, as the instructional coaches, have our hands full.
With the young ones.
In a good way. Thank you.
And we're so glad to have the team. So glad to have the team.
And can you make sure that the board knows when you set up that heritage fair?
For sure. Absolutely.
It prompts a bigger conversation about calendar, right? Because some of these things happen and we're not necessarily always in the know. So we'll work on that as a district.
All right, that concludes 6.1. Now moving back into our normal order, we have 5.1 public comment. There is only one signed up to present tonight, Nahoma.
Good evening. My name is Nahoma Thundercloud. I'm the Executive Director of Ho-Chunk Nation Education Department, alum of Black River Falls High School, and also a former school board member. But some things happened in the last couple of weeks that were really telling about the culture in our schools that is not very inclusive of all of our students, so I just have some remarks prepared. As our community of Black River Falls grows in diversity, fear, prejudice, and discrimination grows within the confines of important spaces within our very own school district. The school district of Black River Falls has had and continues to have instances where implicit bias, discrimination, discriminatory suspension, expulsion, overt racism, and much more take place. Racism exists within the halls of our district. Many of our students witness, learn, and never forget where and when racism has affected them in the school. In our conversations with current and former students, it was found that the presence of such biases, prejudices, and discriminations, these unfortunate experiences, range from microaggressions to blatant racist comments from teachers, administrators, white peers, and community members. While the student body has become more diverse, almost every teacher at School District of Black River Falls is white. Despite having students mention the prejudices they faced and continue to face at school, the school board, as well as the school leadership, has failed to take any significant and tangible actions toward racial reconciliation and progress. In our discussions with students, we learned about incidents where students were gaslighted, thereby manipulated to create self-doubt about the reality of systemic racism that prevails in our school district. In such a diverse school district, the diverse culture, values, brought by students and their families are still viewed as other or extra. School District Black River Falls must acknowledge and accept the fact that racism has existed in our halls for decades, and in many instances has caused long-lasting trauma among many Black, Indigenous, and people of color students. The journey to progress can only begin with honest acceptance of the brutal truth and genuine commitment to remediate the existing situation. If the board and leadership team are honest about their intentions and commitments, bold and tangible actions must be implemented to create an environment where our students, particularly Black, Indigenous, and students of color, and LGBTQ+ students, feel safe, welcomed, and respected. Our school must begin to feel like a place where all students' identities are respected and the diversity of our community is celebrated. The diverse culture, values, and practice that our students and families bring to our district must be accepted as part of our own society. Only then can we effectively ensure the success of our students and our future. And just some ideas of what actions that we should take. Most importantly, we're recommending an equity audit. I know we've been in discussion with the school district for a few months now, and that's one of the ideas that has come up. Also, it takes a lot more just to be not racist, but to actually be proactive in anti-racism and also anti-LGBTQ+ discrimination. So those are just some thoughts we want to bring together tonight. So thank you.
Thank you. And then,
Because the board has not been together as a collective group since the incident happened on February 8th, I asked if perhaps Mr. Madsen and Mrs. Penza could give the board an update as to some of the actions that have been taken with students, because they are certainly the ones most closely involved, if that is okay.
Be great.
It's fine how she was gone when I walked in, but I definitely have stuff to say too.
how does the board feel? Because why don't we?
They can go first, that's fine.
Oh, go ahead. We're in public comments, so.
My name is Carrie Swigum. I am a parent to one child right now in the high school. And I did have some comments on this incident on the 8th. Also some comments on the incident of the aide making those remarks. That aide, by no right, had the right to make those remarks. Nobody does. But what we heard is a snippet this big. We don't know what happened before this incident. We don't know what happened after this incident. If the aide apologized out of frustration. I speak with a lot of kids in the high school. They come to me telling me what goes on. And, you know, I believe there's teachers here, you said, from the Ho-Chunk class that they have, right? I have someone in that class repeatedly telling me that there's a boy that picks on her, and I say, hey, why don't you go to the teacher? The teacher's not in the class. What happens? How does this get resolved if the teacher isn't in the class supervising the class that my tax dollars pay to have this teacher teach? Nothing happens. When my son was in middle school, he had two Ho-Chunk girls that were very insistent upon picking on him and taking his Chromebook and smashing it to the floor. He repeatedly went to the teachers. Nothing happened. Nothing. Gunnar was the troublemaker. Okay, so, and as I understand, they feel it on their end. We're feeling it on the white end too. Okay, it's all over. It's all over the district. And it's because of the diversity and inclusion. You separate. You go to almost any classroom and you hear this rule for this one, this rule for this one. That's not inclusion. That's diversity. That's like me saying only people up here with green eyes are the smart ones, and those are the only ones you can trust. fifth grade, I had a lesson on that because I was best friends with a Hispanic girl. And you know what happened? By the end of the day, everybody was fighting because you're telling the kids one is better than the other. It's not. There should be no color involved. We're all the same color, different shades. And it needs to start happening that way. Not one gets this rule, one gets this rule, one gets this rule. The teachers, there are several good teachers, and then there are bad apples. Bad apples that are trying to impose their personal opinions that I actually wrote Brad, Shelley, and Luke about in an email. And I didn't get a response. Actually I did get a response from Luke because it was during parent-teacher conferences that this came up. And he wanted to take me away and to a separate room and we can talk about it. However, I know it's all based on inclusion and we want to keep it transparent, but we can't hear the problems that are actually happening in the district because now you're a troublemaker and we don't hear from you. Shelley, I appreciate you trying to respond for Jennifer Toflat. Could totally tell it was your verbiage, not her responding to me. Nice try. There again, gaslighting the issue. It's ridiculous. And I will not be quiet about it. I would have appreciated an email or a call back to talk about it in private. But if we have to go public with it, I'm more than willing to go public with it. Teachers need to keep their opinions.
Thank you, your time is up, thank you.
Yeah, teachers need to keep their opinions out of the lessons and teach. That's what you're hired for.
Okay, great to see you all. It's PD day, so I'm more dressed down than usual, so sorry. Yeah, so it's been since the 8th. It's been, I'd be lying if I said it hasn't been challenging. You know, we are, we're sensing, we feel some of the tension in our building, and we're really hopeful. We feel like we are in a place right now. We had a really great day this morning with our staff, trying to find ways to move forward. You know, we have when you're dealing with adolescents who are figuring out who they are and what they believe and why they believe what they believe, this can really escalate and accelerate kind of those feelings. And so we think it's a good thing. In the end, we're hopeful that we can make it a positive thing where Kim has been, she reminded me today that, you know, somebody has been saying that we just need to focus on being kind to each other. Like this last summer, she said that's an issue for us. And that's been the message that our staff has heard, you know, through everything we did today is, you know, we are unique. We are a unique rural district, folks. Like I spent about 3 hours last night looking through state report cards and focusing on 3 things. Students with IEPs, percentage of students with IEPs in your district, racial diversity in your district, and economically disadvantaged percentage. There's nobody like us. And we are looking at that as a positive in our building and focusing on ways that we can celebrate the fact that we are so unique. It starts with being kind to each other, and so that's what we're focusing on with our kids. We feel hopeful, like I said. We're not perfect, I don't think anywhere is, but we have a staff that's really committed to doing the right thing by our kids. And we surveyed our kids several times over the last couple of weeks about what they're feeling and what they see, and it was eye-opening for our staff to hear some of the things that they've, the perception that our kids have of what goes on in our building. You know, and we talked this morning about how you need to lower your defenses and just take it as it was delivered and not be defensive about things. And that's really humbling to hear some of the things. Like I had to read some things that were really negative about me, and I don't think that's who I am. But I have a few kids that do, that matters to me, that they think one thing and I may think another. And so that was the challenge to our staff, is to take these comments and let's use them to get better. So, as I've said several times, we have staff that's really committed and hopeful. Did you want to add?
That was what I was going to say about the surveys, so
Okay.
we're good.
Sorry, stepped on your toes. So, if you have questions, I'm happy to answer.
I have a question. In the staff, the high school, are there any Native American or any other minorities?
Yep, so we have actually 4 staff who are 4 Ho-Chunk staff right now. So we include Sheehan Hospital to teach Ho-Chunk in our building, and then Jasmine Young Thunder is a JAG teacher, and then Eli Young Thunder. So I'm excited by that we have kids who see themselves in the staff, and certainly I would love that number to grow, but it's a step, and it's a really important step. And you know, it's we've talked about the pool of candidates statewide, nationwide, teacher candidates has shrunken tremendously over the years. And one of the things that I've committed to doing is reaching out to kids that I think will be good educators, potentially, and recruiting those kids. And having conversations with all of our students, our Native students, our white students, our Black students, saying, hey, you'd be a really great teacher. You should think about that. Because I don't know that happens, especially with our marginalized populations.
I attend a workshop at the WASB on Educators Rising, and I was excited about it because it's growing your own educators out of your district. And I talked to Dr. Severson about it, and she was already on it. So,
well, and currently we have 6 kids who are in through CBTC, a teacher academy, where when they finish, they earn up to like 15 credits that will help them get into an education program. So that's exciting. You know, we're trying to make strides there, build our pool.
I think that's the way to go.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we will move on. I want to consider items 5.2 and 5.3 at the same time. This is the Boys and Girls Hockey Co-op Agreement renewals.
Thank you for coming. The only thing that I would add to our typical every 2-year renewal is that the Girls Hockey Co-op, you will see that there's quite a few larger schools in that co-op, and the group has asked for us to start considering whether we would not skate as the Tigers, that co-op would create a new mascot that would be unique to them. My first instinct was they've always been the Tigers, and we pay the certainly our share and the ice costs, all of that stuff, but then we also talked about just the sheer cost of new uniforms for everybody, rebranding, what that looks like. I don't know if everyone is aware, but our youth girls also co-op with many of these same communities, and they're called the Wisconsin TNT, Tigers and Timberwolves, I think, because it was primarily Black River and Tomah. But as you can see, that group continues to get larger. They just brought this up to us probably a month ago, and our answer at that time was, but we really haven't had much time to talk about it. And as the hosting co-op, our board would get to determine whether that was something we were interested in doing or not. All of the schools need to sign the co-op agreement every 2 years. I asked Andy Osgard if he felt like this was going to be a deal breaker, that if we said no, we weren't open to that, they weren't going to sign. And he said they said that they wanted to plant the seeds this year and keep talking about it for 2 years down the road. So if the board has strong opinions on whether we remain the Tigers, it would be good to know that before we move too far.
What do other schools do that are co-op with that many?
There's really a wide variety, right? Like, as for our boys, nobody asks. We've just stayed the Tigers, but the boys, there are some smaller schools where you get 1 or 2 skaters from there. On the girls, he did tell us Black River Falls has the largest number of girls, but there's some others that are getting close. Like, I don't remember for 100%, but I want to say like 11, 9, 8, something like that. So we did have the primary. I can think of some of the schools in other areas where they do change their name, right? Like right now, what is Toma Sparta for their youth?
For their youth, I think they're the Titans.
Yeah, so they've become the Titans from that area, so. It's not unheard of, it's just, so add to this, there was also somebody who's involved in youth hockey in our community who was very much interested in another sheet of ice and wanted the district to do a referendum to build it. And we could very quickly say, we don't own that property, we can't build on somebody else's property, not a thing. Thank you for coming. So that was out, but the ice time is really a crunch. The number of skaters in youth hockey and figure skating is at a really significant high, which is fantastic, right? Right now, our two hockey teams both made it through the first round of playoffs. I mean, they're experiencing success, which is fantastic. But practice ice time is really, really, really little. So the girls' co-op has also said, well, could we go practice some at Toma where they don't have as many teams, or Sparta where they don't have figures, whatever. So they're wondering if they could move some of their practices as well. And so that would free up ice time here, but it would also make our skaters have to drive when it has been our team, so.
And we're kind of central for Grant.
Right. Yeah, when you look at how far people are coming, we're kind of in the middle, whereas they would have to drive a lot farther.
Well, and Granton, I don't believe they have ice. Millman doesn't have ice.
Right.
Whitehall doesn't have ice.
Right. So that is that's the girls up there, and so the Toma Sparta are the two. And you could, I mean, they're the southernmost, and then, so you can see everyone wants more ice time and less travel time is really the ultimate goal. So for this year, we're not asking for a change. I just wanted you to know that has, those conversations have begun.
Yeah, I guess my main question would be number of skaters from each school before we look at that. I know I know there's some hockey teams as well as some wrestling teams that are under someone else's, or under a neutral flag.
Yeah.
So.
There's no way we could incorporate all the names into right TNT, Tigers, and Timberwolves, but by the time you get all of those, that'd be a lot. So seeking your approval on those, I just wanted to have some discussion about the asks.
Make a motion to approve both the boys and girls hockey co-op.
I'll second.
And we have motion second again, this is on both co-ops. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is the start date waiver. So we did have our hearing today and received really no significant comments. So
I don't know if you have additional questions, but the district would appreciate your support in requesting a waiver. We are fairly confident it would be approved, but there is always the opportunity for DPI to say, just kidding, you're not going to.
The history as last year we did it.
Not the start early.
We did that.
Right. When we closed that hour early,
Sure.
we did a waiver on the number of instructional minutes that year, but this is a start early waiver. It's a similar process, and so, but to allow us to start before September 1st. I can just tell you that everybody that's been part of the calendar conversations is in favor of the change.
So do you want a motion?
It definitely needs your action.
I make a motion to approve the August 29th proposed start time.
I'll second.
motion second again. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Update from the Community Engagement Committee. Nick, are you presenting that tonight?
Nick was the hero of the last meeting. I snuck in at the last minute and they were all saying how Nick saved the day.
Yeah.
Explain how that happened.
His cleverness.
I really didn't save the day, but we kind of it was getting pretty stagnant, collecting data, and I just had a few ideas and kind of rattle them off, and they liked them. So like the name would be the Tiger Community Organization.
TCO instead of PTO.
And then like 4 of the main objectives of the organization are collaborative conversations, volunteerism, fundraiser/event planning, and school support, being that of students, teachers, or extracurricular activities. And the next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday night at 6 p.m. at the Red Creek.
Not this Wednesday, next Wednesday.
22nd.
So it was scheduled for the 22nd, was gonna be our next work group. Carla Gearing stopped in just before this meeting and said, do we just wanna be bold and cancel that meeting because the weather is anticipated to be sketchy? She thought since it was a smaller work group, we could reschedule for next Monday, but literally that happened like half hour before I came upstairs. So I was going to send an email to that team asking to reschedule for Monday, and then the big kickoff meeting of the TCO is Wednesday, March 8th. And every principal has to find 3 parents to bring to that meeting. And every board member has to find 10. No, I'm just kidding.
Is that a 6 p.m. start time on the 8th? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's going to be not the 22nd, but the
27th. Yeah. Sorry about that.
What time? And what time?
That was also 6 o'clock was the time that worked for everyone.
Okay.
Both at Red Creek?
Yes. Thank you. There's a lot of enthusiasm for the group right now. Lots of really good conversations and interest in sharing the ownership load so that we don't get 1 or 2 people that again feel bogged down and lose their steam. So it was nice to see a diverse group back at the conversation, even if I came in late. So.
Yeah, so the collective conversations is meant to be for all different people and views and coming together and trying to talk through it constructively to better the community. I mean,
What's the letters C?
TCO. Tiger Community Organization.
I don't know if it's that good, really.
Pardon me? What did you say?
I don't know if it's that good, but no, it's,
we were stumped. We were stumped before it. So.
I think it kind of is what it is, you know. We're all tigers, we're all a community, and it's an organization, so it just made sense.
It represents everything that you want to happen.
Any other questions for Nick? All right, so board members bring 10 people. 6.2 is employment recommendations. Those are in our packet and none require our approval as of yet, so questions on those?
But notice we lost a bus driver and we got a bus driver. So at least for this month, that was a wash. Christy has been busy training, so a couple of people that are willing to sub, not necessarily be full-time drivers, but those are really, really, really helpful to us as well. So.
We will move on. Questions on employment recommendations? And we are moving on to the AGR data.
Our elementary principals are coming on now.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is Chris Nelson, was his mother a bus driver for many years? Or is that a different one?
I don't know.
I don't know that either.
Oh. I know there's Chris Nelson, like Tony. Drove bus for like ever. I don't know if that's, is that her son? Or?
I don't know.
Christopher Nelson is a common name, but.
I know who Tony is.
Were you hoping to wait for Brandon to do that? Were you hoping to wait for Brandon?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. We can skip it and come back. If
Yeah,
that
I'm not
works
sure
for
what
you. Okay.
He said Oregon.
Mr. No, please don't. Please don't. Mr. Dar's wife. He needs to go pick up some medicine, so he will be back shortly. Sorry about that. I wasn't reading the room when you were giving me the eyeballs. I apologize. So, student success reports. They are here.
Okay, so which one is this now?
This is 7.2. It'll say middle school. Yep, that's it.
So
me curveballs.
So kind of going along with the AGR report from the middle school, we've typically also included the high school because we have similar testing types of things. So what we'll see on the next slide is just, you've seen some of this before, but the good news is we wanted to connect this work from what we saw in spring testing with what's happening now. So just kind of a reminder of what we saw last spring. So it's just demographic data, or is our wonderful demographic data. And just the big news is There was growth this spring from the year before, which is exciting and great.
Absolutely. Our next goal is 71. 71 is our goal that we're trying to hit next time. Go up by 3 points instead of 2.5, just below our goal. That will put us in 4 stars. So it's a lofty goal, but we're going to go for it.
And she keeps saying spring testing. Remember, spring testing, fall report cards, right? So that's why it feels a little bit more recent, but I just wanted to make sure everyone's with us.
Thank you. And then on this side, we just, it's like celebrations, right? We got to focus on some of the things that the work, all that hard work that we're doing, and then starting to see some of that movement in the data. And so this area is about growth, and Mr. Nortman called out 2 different areas.
So if you look at English language arts on the top right, subject area scores, the state average was 66.0 this year. We met that state average in ELA, which is very exciting. Historically, since I've been at the middle school, we've been below the state average. And that was something we really wanted to meet. If you look at the mathematics, we actually exceeded or outpaced the state average by 17 points, which is pretty incredible. Our math crew really knocked it out of the park last year. Our math students is what I should say. So both, it's great to meet it, but it's always nice to outpace it.
So on the next slide, this slide really just talks about, it's called like value added, and it breaks down by the different groups or different demographics that we have in the district. And where we want to see students and see our different groups is we want to at least be on that line or to the right of the line. And that colored in dark blue color is the color that we're really looking for. So we have a couple areas at the bottom where we didn't get all the way over to the line, but we did see growth from last year. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, and overall, it's not too shabby. I mean, we went to 3.0. We want to be in the blue. We did not go any higher in our top in American Indian or Alaska Native, which is too bad. But we did not decline either. That was exact same as the year before. And economically disadvantaged, we were exactly the same as well. But the other 2 down that were on the left side of the line, where we want to get into the right side of the line, we did increase by 0.2 with our students with disabilities. And the non-proficient last year, we increased 0.1. So we're moving those 2 in the right direction. The good news is we had a lot of on the blue, but we're also moving. So our goal next year is to have everybody on that blue side of that line. So that's what we're hoping for.
Just to stress, this is ELA, and then on the next slide, it's math. And what's so exciting about this slide is that if you notice, everyone's in the group across all of our groups, and that's what we're looking for, is to meet the needs of all of our students. And so it's really exciting. So on our next slide. So this was where we wanted to get to. So we're telling you the story that we had good growth last year. We saw some really positive movement, and we're hoping to continue that growth, and this is an indicator of where we're at as far as our Ready Screener data is telling us. So just to describe this chart, the way it works is there's 4 quadrants. Where you want to be, if you have high performance, like high scores on the test and high growth, you're going to be in the top right. The top left side is lower performance, but still high growth. And if you're in the bottom left, that's where you really don't want to be, low performance, low growth. And then the bottom right is high performance. So you have high scores, but you're not really growing. And so the middle school as a building, like you can see that we're up there in that high growth area and ready for reading and approaching the high performance area. So it's an exciting spot.
So if we look by grade level, you see 8th grade performed very, very high. Unfortunately, we were low performing last year. But with that growth, we're going to be moving into that right quadrant. 7th grade still in the high growth, and 6th grade still in the high growth. I'm not sure how many students it's going to take us to move to the right to get into the high performance and high growth, but as long as we continue with the high growth, we're going in the right direction. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Got some questions.
Yeah, in the previous slide, so is the upper right one, is that the middle school? Or what are the 2 dots? I guess that's
This
where
is the middle school.
Okay,
so that one is
what's the other?
Red Creek.
Right. Okay. And these, and then the following slide, those are all grades within.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
And then on the next slide, we have it by math, where you can see where the school is at, the middle school. It's really high there in that growth, which we saw, really looking at, it compares to what we saw in the spring. So it's nice to be able to triangulate evidence or start to triangulate that evidence. And then on the next slide.
And again, 8th grade did really, really well this year. We are so close, just a couple students away from high performance and high growth. 7th and 6th grade though, still good growth. We're excited about it, and we're going to continue to work to see how much further we can push them. So, last year the middle school had big turnover. It was a really big concern. A lot of sleepless nights this summer trying to fill positions. 14 new teachers at our school. And people
Out of a
said
total of how many classrooms, sorry?
18 regular
Yeah.
classrooms.
Yeah, think about that, folks.
Yeah. And so, you know, we really put it to work, you know. We're very fortunate to have some really key people in our building. We're lucky to have Nicole working with us, you know, our interventionists, our coaches. And so we were really concerned, what is it going to look like this year? Because out of those teachers, 2 have 2 or more years of experience, the rest are new or first year teachers. So it was pretty scary a little bit. But as you saw tonight, they are fantastic kids. Adults, teachers, they're doing a great job. They work incredibly hard. They have a very, very positive attitude. And these are all the things that we've adjusted in the last 2 years, and a lot of that is going on this year. Our target time 3 years ago was not where we wanted it to be. We overhauled it completely. And we went to where we were doing a lot of remedial work and catching up work. And I'm happy to say that we are about 50-50 right now in that remedial work. We have some extensions, and we also have some reteaching at grade level that's going on. That's exactly where I wanted to get. Our math department right now is looking at data of common formative assessments, which is incredibly exciting for me because I wasn't sure it was going to happen this year, but it is happening this year. It's real. They're doing the work. It's very, very exciting. So that target time was a huge lift. It was hard for our teachers. There were some tears, a lot of extra work, a lot of planning, and Vicki Kramer, bless her heart, she really pulled us through this. She worked incredibly hard to help us build that target time. So I give a lot of credit to Vicki and her teachers for that work. The PLC work, our team leaders this year, you got to meet you got to meet Tony tonight. You'll get to meet them more next week. We've got a little plan about that, but our PLC work is really coming along with our standards-based grading and how our teams are working together to plan together, to assess together, so forth and so on, and to look at data together. We are not where we want to be at PLC yet, but where we've come from, we're doing a really nice job. I'd say we're probably 45 to 50% where we want to be, but we are improving all the time. Each week, each month, we're getting better and better. Team planning and teaching, it's just a common thing now in the middle school. Our teams have common times where they're meeting. It's really, really exciting to walk in and listen to the enthusiasm as they're throwing ideas back and forth, or, hey, this really worked well for me last year, let's try this again this year, or, hey, I've done this in the past, or I saw this done when I was student teaching. So that team planning and teaching is really, really important. And I'll say that, you know, we talk about teachers that are veteran teachers that have been there for 15, 20 years and the great ideas they have and the experience they have. But I'd also throw in there that our young teachers right now are coming with an incredible amount of experience. What they get to see in a classroom compared to what I saw when I was coming through the system is much, much different. And they bring a lot to the table. So just because we had new teachers this year, we weren't down anything because their fresh new ideas were really, really, really helpful. And we've taken some of those ideas and ran with them. So the intentional planning, we're working really, really hard right now to intentionally plan our blocks. I got the idea from Kim and Luke about, hey, why are kids not engaged? What can we do different? What do we do different? I picked their brains, they shared ideas with me, and we've really taken off on it with our instructional coaches. How do we get the most out of our students? And how do we get the most out of our teachers? And just the way we plan those and how we break up that 78-minute block has helped us a great deal in engaging students. We still have a ways to go. Speaking from experience, I had an instructional coach when I was teaching Literacy Collaborative. And it took some time for me to learn what they were asking me to do, but once the light bulb went off, I got it. Some of our teachers are there, some are getting very, very close, but it's still really exciting work. Classroom expectations, we've developed a lot of classroom expectations this year that are common. So as students go from classroom to classroom, from grade to grade, the expectations are the same. It's easier, there's less reteaching, and our behavior has gotten a lot better because of it, and our engagement is also increasing because of that. And then relationships that we're really trying to build with students. Hey, you have my permission. If you have to take a day and just talk, visit, learn about them, create that relationship, positive phone calls, you know, and just we really, really, really built on that. When I was teaching first grade doing my master's program, my capstone, I believe that's what it was called, was on relationships and building community in the district. And I didn't realize it, but I've been building that and building that and building that all my life as a teacher. And now we're building that in the middle school, and it's fitting us very, very well. Data use, we are still using our data, and whether it's our iReady, our Wisconsin Forward, or just our data that we're getting on formative and summative assessments. And that data use, you can do all the testing you want, but if you don't know what to do with it once you've done it, it's not doing you much good. So giving students that feedback, making plans, how are we going to do this? They got it, they didn't get it, how are we going to adjust our instructions so they do get it? So that data use is very, very important. We still have some learning to do on that. We're not quite as efficient as we want to. We are getting better at data digs. Today, all 3 grade levels pushed themselves through our data dig without our help. So that was very, very exciting to see them guide themselves through that. And then school culture and collective advocacy, I think that's probably the biggest thing right now. That is what we're really trying. We have some really amazing clubs that we're working with right now. We have some great leaders in those clubs. Just the fun things that we're doing, the celebrations we get to have, it's made a huge difference for our students. And when our students are having fun, our teachers are having fun. When our teachers are having fun, our students are having fun. So it's working for us. We've pushed really hard, guys, to make a lot of great changes. It's been really tough at times. We've lost teachers because of the push that we made, but the work that we're doing is the right work. And it's making a difference for our students, and that's where we have to go. That's what we have to do. That's our number one. So what I would say is thank you to our staff members at our school. They're the ones that are doing the work. They are amazing people. Every one of them at the middle school, they're great. And the common theme that we talk about at the school is that change does not happen overnight. It takes time. And you know, we've been working hard for the last 3 or 4 years, and we're starting to see some benefits. And I just hope and pray we can keep going the right way and find that growth. And I really think we've got the right systems put into place to continue that growth. So, sorry, that was a little longer than I thought.
Good job. That was excellent. Yeah. Well done.
So student clubs, I just got to talk about that a little bit. We have some pretty active clubs between Pep Club, Student Council, FCCLA, Chess, Art Club. We have a lot of different clubs that really, really help our students feel connected. We have a lot of students that are participating, probably more than I ever remember before. This year we created a behavior ed plan, and we're implementing PBIS. We never thought PBIS would fit the middle school. We are realizing and recognizing how much PBIS is helping us right now. The behavior ed plan and PBIS has been a great help. So we're really excited to get that going. We have a long ways to go on both of those. And then the target time, hard work, rigor, that's the results. So the other thing we say a lot, if we believe, we can. And right now we have a lot of staff members that believe.
Any questions?
I just love your positivity towards your staff.
We have an awesome staff.
And I think your leadership is showing too. You should
I'm
take some
surrounded by
credit.
great people, so say that.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Nope, go for it.
Positive behavior, no, I can't.
Intervention and
Yes,
supports.
Shelley.
So, positive behavior intervention. So it's a structure of majors and minors in which behaviors are classroom managed versus office managed, and it is meant to provide clarity, and it kind of comes at behaviors from the standpoint of if kids know better, they'll do better. So start from a reteaching standpoint all the time as opposed to an immediate consequence. It's a long process that we've been working on, and then kicked it out the door, then we grab it back, then we drag it behind us for a while, and then we take some steps forward, and it's messy, messy, messy for sure. So it's a behavior management philosophy, I guess. Just one more thing that I would add about the work at the middle school. I agree that money does not make all the difference in the world, right? You can't buy student achievement with money. However, I just need to remind everybody that our ESSER funds, we hired another teacher for 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, so that their PLC teams could learn how to be PLC teams together and each teach one core area. The fact that these 3 that were sitting here, they each teach social studies. So they're taking that opportunity with 1 prep a day to make sure it is an amazing prep, an amazing experience for the students. We hired 2 instructional coaches. We had 1 before, but added a 2nd instructional coach and added a 2nd interventionist. And Vicki Kramer, a district reading specialist, used to be housed in another building. She's also housed at the middle school. And so I agree with the statement that you can't buy student achievement with money. However, you can buy some really great people with lots of skills with the appropriate amount of funding so that you can make that change happen. And now the other buildings are looking, saying, so does the reading specialist have to stay living at the middle school, or could she find another office somewhere else and start digging into that building and all of those pieces? So I just wanted to highlight that for a moment because we made a big investment in the middle school, and it's fantastic to see. I mean, this is exactly what we hope for when we make that kind of investment. So, okay, now we're ready for our AGR report.
So it's that time of year again. We are talking about our achievement gap reduction and the strategies that we've identified at Forest Street that we're using are primarily instructional coaching. We have two coaches that use or that share this position, 0.5 and 0.5, so half their day are spent coaching. And then in kindergarten, we can also say that our class sizes are kept under 18 because our classes are currently at 16. So we've got a smaller kindergarten cohort moving through. And so just a reminder, for math, our goal is that at least 50% of our students will achieve the at or on or above grade level benchmark on the numbers and operations on the iReady math assessment. So we really wanted to drill down this year and do something a little bit different on iReady and look at the subtest in iReady and influence the most basic one on there. So not just only the overall, but look at counting and identifying numbers. And if there ever was a year to do it, it was this year. Again, if you remember our earlier conversation, we've got a lot of kids that have never been in a school setting or never been in a social setting. We're really feeling that. So just to give you a little bit of data, so we're looking at that top row, so if you just follow that one across, the fall, our kids came in and they were at 9% on or above grade level. At mid-year, we're at 27% and our goal is to be at 50%. Last year, they came in at 9% and at winter, at that mid-year point, they were at 16%, so we are definitely on track. We're doing good in kindergarten.
I feel like I ask this every time, but these two tests, the bar is raising throughout the year, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely. And let me talk just a minute on this one too. So this is identifying your numbers, using numbers, counting forward and backward. We're doing a lot of coaching in the classrooms, giving teachers tools to intervene, working with kids in small groups. There's a lot of coaching and a lot of teaching and reteaching that's happening in the classrooms to help move these kids and grow our students. And then in first grade, the bar's a little bit higher. Same thing, numbers and operations, but at a higher level. At the fall, at the beginning of the school year, we had 7% of students that were on or above grade level, and right now we're at 20%. Last year our kids came in and they were at 6%, excuse me, and we were at 21%. So we're kind of right there, but we have a big push to get them up to that 50%. So we've got some plans that we met on today at our PD day to talk about how we're gonna get up to that 50%. We're pretty confident.
You know, when they leave kindergarten, they're at what, 40, whatever percent, and they come in the next year and they're at 7. Is there any way we can do anything about that? They don't fall back that far.
We try to. Summer school is one thing. Sending home some academic things so that they can do some things at home, so that summer loss is not so
Must be a huge summer
egregious.
loss.
Yeah. Yeah, and from kindergarten to first grade, definitely.
Every grade level, right?
Right.
And to be honest, that is a statistic that is extremely prevalent in low socioeconomic communities. And so that is the challenge, right? Parents that are both working and
Nothing's done all summer, so it's just like that, yeah.
In the past couple years, we've tweaked and modified and worked with something we call our academic learning bags. We send them home once a year, but we've really tried to stock the things that we're putting in there so it's engaging for families to do with their children, so it's not just additional homework, but it's engaging work for them to do, games, not just worksheets and additional things where it makes parents want to gouge their eyes out doing it with their kids, but things that are fun to do with kids and things that kids want to do with their parents or with their siblings even, that help, grow in those math and literacy areas. And so we have been thinking about that. So not only during the school year, but maybe during the summer, they pull it out a couple times and do it a week. So we have been thinking about that. If you go to the next slide, Jill. So this is our growth goal.
we always want our kids to not only achieve, but we also want them to be growing. So even if they reach that achievement goal, but they're also growing. Our goal is that at least 50% will make adequate growth, adequate progress towards their typical growth goal. And what we determine is adequate progress. Adequate growth is meeting 80% or more of their typical growth goal. And so those orange bars and arrows over to the right is where we're looking to have 50%. And at mid-year, we had 27%. And so by the end of the year, we want to have at least 50% of our students in that quadrant.
And just to be clear, that 80% of the growth goal, that wasn't a number we made up, that was one that iReady recommends, right?
Yes.
Just to be clear, we didn't just randomly pick that.
And same goal for first grade. And at mid-year, we had 17%. So we are looking to get up to 50% by the end of the school year. So in literacy, every year we've kind of stepped up our game in what we are aiming to do. This year, our goal in kindergarten is that at least 70% of our students in kindergarten will achieve the grade level benchmark on the correct letter sounds component of DIBELS. So DIBELS was new a few years ago, and we started with phoneme segmentation fluency. PSF is what the acronym is, and we have went up to the next level of subtest, and so we're on the correct letter sounds now, which is the next one up, and you're at least 70%. And we started off with 5% of our students on or above the grade level benchmark, and at mid-year we have 26%. Our goal is 70%. Last year, at the beginning of the year, I went back and looked at the data. We had 1% at the beginning of the school year, and by mid-year we had 22%, but we were close to meeting that goal, and so I am pretty confident that we're going to meet this goal this year. We've been doing some really amazing things with our kindergarten and our target time as well. So if you move on to first grade. In first grade, a little bit different. We're looking at our words recoded correctly, which is the next test up. We want at least 50% of our students in first grade to achieve the grade level benchmark on words recoded correctly on the DIBELS subtest. And at the beginning of the school year, we had 36% of our students on or above. At mid-year, we were at 40%. And our goal is to get to 50%. Last year when I looked back, this is a new test for us this year, or new sub-test that we're targeting. Last year we had 20% in the fall, and at mid-year we had 28%. So we're improving as a system in that. So any questions?
All right, good evening. So the AGR grant runs through third grade. So at Red Creek, that includes our second graders and our third graders, in addition to forestry. I'll also show you our fourth and fifth grade data so that you can get a good look at what that looks like. How we are adjusting for the age gap reduction is class sizes under 18 to ensure proper data-driven instruction. In order to get at that, all of our classes are currently over 18, but we also have an instructional coach to help raise teacher efficacy, and so that meets the standards of the grant. We're going to take a first look at second grade reading. Goal number 1, Red Creek will increase the percentage of students that are at or above grade level by 20 percentage points as measured by the iReady diagnostic. So for second grade, we had 10% of our students that came in at or above grade level. And that was when we tested in September. When we tested again in January, we are now at 30%. So if the goal was 20 percentage points worth of growth, we have already met that by this winter test. Now, keep in mind that that is saying that 30% of our 120 students are at grade level, and so we're gonna keep pushing. The iReady test has a typical growth goal, which is about a year's growth, a little bit more, and it has a stretch growth. And so
if we've met our typical growth, we're ready to move on towards our stretch growth. For reading, there's a second goal, which was the same as Melanie's over at Forest Street. We're looking for 50% of our students will show adequate progress towards their typical growth goal, which is that 80%. It's the same graph as you see on the left there, of which we want them to be above 80%, the right two bars on the graphs. Adequate progress is 80%. In the winter, from spring to winter, we measured at 44% of our students have already met that. If the goal is 50, we are well on our way. If you look at the picture on the right side, it says progress to annual typical growth goal. 68% of our students is the median that have made their way towards that typical growth goal. So it shows that in reading, we're well on our way to hitting our growth goals for second grade. Second grade math. Like you saw from kindergarten to first grade over at Forest Street, they started much lower at 6%. That summer slide, as we call it. They come down a little bit before we build them back up. They started at 6% at or above grade level. By the second time we took this test in January, our goal was to raise 20 percentage points. They have met that goal in math at 27% of our students at or above grade level. So we are showing the growth that we want. Next, we need to start looking for the achievement. Second grade math started the year at it's the same growth goal of 50% of our students hitting that 80% mark. Right now in the winter, second grade in math is at 34%, so we have some growing to do in that category in math, and progress towards the goal at 59% are on their way there or showing the progress that they need in order to reach that goal. So that shows that we are also on our way there. Next up is third grade, and if you're wondering what's up with the colors, if you've been through Red Creek, they're all separated by wings, and each wing is color coordinated. 2 is blue, they rhyme, in case you forget. If you want to know the rest of them, I have little things for all of them, but for another time. Third grade reading, the goal was 20 percentage points of growth. In the fall, they came in at 37%, which was great. You see that summer slide a lot, right? But coming in at 37% of our students at or above grade level is much higher than we normally see. So we're happy to see that in third grade. 20 percentage points is the goal, which would be at 57%. They are already at 52%. If you're wondering about the colored bars and the stoplight looking thing, green is the at or above grade level, and at the bottom you can see how many students. 24 plus 32 is 56. 56 of our 110 are at grade level in reading in third grade. Again, it's the same goal. You can see that the winter we're at 50% of our students are already at that 80% progress, and so that's 3% above the goal that we're looking to get. 93% of them have already met their annual typical growth. Math is a little bit more of a struggle, and you'll get to hear about that later tonight, and a little bit later in this as well. So for the goal was to hit 20 percentage points worth of growth. They came in at 11% on or above grade level. The goal would be 31. They're at 26 right now. As far as progress towards the goal, some work to do here in third grade. 22% of those students have shown typical growth goal. The goal is 50. So we're about halfway there, and you can see on the right side progress to annual typical growth. They'll make it there. I'm confident that they will. Some of the things that we have put in place, you can see across the board from Forest Street to Red Creek in second and third grade. You'll see it in fourth and fifth. Reading tends to float higher than math that we've seen this year as well as last year and on our forward exams. So some things that we're switching around is taking more time for small group instruction in math, adding more time to the lesson plans if needed, and switching up our target times so that they're math-based rather than just reading. As promised, fourth grade and fifth grade are up next. Fourth is orange. 4 and orange rhyme, not really, but kind of. So that's how we remember that.
Not one of the ELA teachers, right?
Nope, I'm just giving a speech. So, fourth grade came in at 21%, 21%. The goal is 20% growth. There is a typo on there that the goal is 47%. The goal would actually be 41%. They're currently at 32. One thing that we have also seen within our all of the stoplight graphs, the yellow is really big. Those are those students that are just almost to that green or on or above level. And so what we're constantly talking about, including today during our PD and our data digs, what can we do for the students in the yellow? Those ones that are just floating behind, how can we push them forward? And so that's where we're hoping to see the big growth going forward. Well, on fourth grade is well on their way to their progress. They've met their typical growth goal. So again, they'll be looking at that stretch goal. In math, a little bit lower. Again, you see that summer slide. In the fall, only 11% of students are at or above grade level. With 20% growth, that means we're looking at 31% being at or above grade level by the end of the year. They're currently at 27%. You can see in math again that yellow group is expanding when that should be much smaller. So we're looking to push those students a little bit further. Progress towards the goal, looking at 50% of the typical growth in math. What we can see there is they're at 22%, but on their way, confident that they'll get there. We have dabbled in a little bit of a math pilot to start the year, so we have a couple teachers that are sticking with it because they don't want to miss any topics coming up on the forward exam. And then if there's 5 teachers, there's 2 of them that are kind of working together on the math pilots and putting together lesson plans, and then the other 3 are working together to make common lesson plans in math that they can share with everybody and utilize going forward so that each student is getting the same instruction and the best ideas of the whole group. 5th grade reading. This one we have seen a ton of growth in. Fall, they came in at 22% at or above grade level. The goal is to get them to 42. They're currently at 35%. So that's for achievement. For on the next page for growth, 5th grade is crushing it as far as growth. They're already 7 points past their goal of hitting 50% or more. They're at 105% of their typical growth. When Mr. Nortman was up here and he showed the 4-quadrant graph, this grade level in this subject of reading was the only one to make it into the top right quadrant. So they're doing really well, and so we're going to cheer them on to keep going. In math, they started at 22% for achievement, and we need to get them to 42%. They're at 37, so they're well on their way. Again, shrinking that yellow and catching up the red. And the growth in math, 36% is already at their typical growth goal. We need to get that to 50% or more. As a building, this is what it looks like for Red Creek. So this is all the grades put together. In the fall, 22% of students were at or above grade level. Winter, 37. The goal is to get them to 42 and beyond. Remember, this is the amount of students that are at or above grade level. So while 42 is the goal and 20 percentage points is great growth, what we're looking for is higher achievement as well and pushing them as high as we can. And the other graph, as far as the entire Red Creek, 51% of them have already hit their typical growth goal. Remember, this is all 465 students. And so you can see that 82% have made progress toward that typical growth goal. In math, 12% were at or above. They're at 28 right now. The goal is to get to 32 or 20 percentage points. And we're getting there as well. So far, 29% have shown the typical growth progress, and 52% have made progress towards the typical growth goal. Do you have any questions for either of us?
I have a question. Go ahead, Nick.
Me first?
You first.
Okay. So, just is there any like policies you put in place, like in the fall, if like say there's 12% of the class that's at grade level already, and there's 20% that are 2 grades behind, and like divide them up a little bit to kind of let the ones that are at grade level not be bored, and the ones that are need help get help, you know?
Yep, so what we do is we have to keep teaching them the next thing, right? And so whatever the next topic is, we make sure that that happens for the whole group. Whatever that lesson plan might look like is engaging as possible, but it's the same content for everybody so that everybody gets it. But then at the second half of math, it's a lot of small group instruction where if you're above grade level, there's going to be some sort of enrichment. An example is if it's second grade and you're adding 1-digit numbers and you've already surpassed that, well, you're going to add 2-digit numbers in the second half of math class. Whereas if you haven't met that goal yet, you're going to get more practice with it. In addition to that, our target time groups, they're all leveled and split up. At Red Creek and in second grade, as an example, we are able to split them into about 12 different ability groupings, and then we can deliver the instruction that they need at the level that they need. So to answer your question, like in a typical math class, we're unable to divide all of them at once, and we also need to deliver the content that they all need at the standards that they need, but we also make sure to give them individualized instruction as well. So I hope that answered your question.
So.
I just had a question on how you decide on 20 percentage points. You know, as a board member, I've been a teacher, so I'm realistic about this, but you think, okay, so by the end of the year, 42% will be at where you want to be. I'd love to see it higher, but how do you decide on that?
Yeah, yep. I believe 20% started when we started with iReady, and that was the recommended amount. Now that we're getting better at it, it's like I know I wasn't in here to see all of Dan's, but I know that he said 100% of his students will all hit their stretch growth goal. That is huge, but it's something to shoot for. So it's up to us to decide. We've gone by the guidelines of iReady. In the first year of me studying this goal, it was a good one to start with. I'm ready to expand on it for the next time.
So how often are the students, I mean, is iReady an exam like, or is it on the computer, or is it paper and pencil?
Yeah, it's on the computer and it's 3 times a year. It's called a universal screener. And so every student takes that same test so that we're able to see the data and compare them and group them. We do it in September, January, and then again in May to test the growth throughout the year.
So just another question for you is that, is the iReady exam, I mean, because again, I was a teacher, and sometimes in math, you know, we started the year doing something different. I mean, you know, we might even started with multiplication before we did addition and subtraction, and sometimes that can probably affect your test scores.
Yep. And you're exactly right. Most math curriculums, including our math expressions ones, puts geometry at the end. Guess how good our geometry score is on the first and second tests? Not good. By the end of the year, when we cover all of that stuff, it definitely shows progress in there in achievements. So yes, it does happen, but you know, we have
just got to wait till you teach it.
Well, and you also have to remember that this is screener, right? This is not high stakes. This is so that we can move kids in and out of interventions as appropriate. Our bigger challenge is what's on that forward test that is taken in March or April?
March 27th.
March 27th, the window opens into April. That they've been really intentional about. What are the strands that are more heavily focused on the forward? And then let's realign our curriculum to make sure we're getting to those first. But every time a kid takes a test, it can't feel high stakes, right? So that universal screener just helps us to sort them and put them in the right places. And we use it to guide more where kids are placed and where the curriculum needs additional boosts and stuff, as opposed to measurement of our overall teaching for the year, right? You know, it's a nice growth monitor, but it's a screener, not a full-blown assessment, if that matters.
And to add on to that, something that our teachers will do is if they know that they're not going to hit a topic or a topic needs more review before that forward exam, they'll take time out of their math lesson to re-go over that topic or throw something in there so that at least they've seen it before they take the test.
Right. Thank you.
Any other questions for them? Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes the 7 series. We're up to 8.1, monthly expenditures. As always, that's in the packet. Questions for Jill?
I'll make a motion to approve the monthly expenditures.
I will second that. Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Facility update, is it Jill doing that?
A little bit of both. So Jill's going to share the insurance claim and the most recent update there. Would just tell you that we met with Keith from Myron again this morning, and we think we're closer. Melanie, if you're listening, we're closer to some floor solutions. The people who have been doing the floor, Swanson Flooring, the materials we purchased are called Nora Flooring, and the representative from Canada actually came down and met with the installer and just really made sure that they fully understood where our areas of challenge were. And the big problem with the Nora Flooring is when they were laying it down, the middle, so they had to put their cement down and the middle adhered, but it was already dry before they got to the edges. And so the edges, you can just tap them and you can hear that they're not adhered to the floor. And so it is a long, painful process for them to fix that. And so the representative from Nora Flooring will be here with Swanson Flooring. Right now, Swanson is in the midst of putting together their corrective action package for us and what that will look like. And they recognize that it was an install error, and so it will come at without additional cost to the district. But it's messy because 4th Street has been there's areas still not done. There's areas that, if you remember, we were going to use some of our maintenance dollars to finish that whole upper area, and we've put the brakes on that until we had a product that we felt good about. And so that is the first piece. Second piece, as they redid the ductwork in the lower level, it got very cold downstairs, and a couple of reasons. We didn't all necessarily realize how cold they were. They weren't necessarily telling the people who can be helpful mostly, but they are adding in some of those side rooms. If you remember the lower level of 4th Street, they used to be like practice rooms, whatever. There were old heating units in there, and they pulled them out, and there's cold air coming up from the tunnel. So lots of insulation happening. They're putting in some electric baseboard heaters in 2 of those rooms, and at the base of the stairs that are right where that door is open all the time. So they're putting electric heater in there, baseboard heater, as well as that one classroom. And so we think that that will get better very, very, very quickly. And then the masonry, we are still talking about Walsh coming back this summer, and they have talked about their time frame, but they've already said we're not going to have the cleanup capability, and we said that's a really big deal for us. And so we think that there will be a third party likely contracted to do that cleaning. I say it every single time we're talking about summer work. That staff should not have to tolerate another August where that building is not spotless. Please, please, please do everything you can with your contractors to get it done in June so that in July the building can be clean. So August that staff doesn't have to do any of the in between. So that is our update on those the 2 long-standing issues. And now Jill can move forward with the claim.
Just wanted to give you an update from last time we talked about this for the vandalism claim. I'm going to scroll right to the bottom. So our expenditures to date have totaled $1.4 million. We've paid out all of those dollar amounts. We have a few amounts down here on the schedule that have originally been denied by our builder's risk. I'm working with them to take another look at them. Some of this warranty work, I don't know that that's going to be able to happen. Insurance said, well, we cleaned all the units, we cleaned them, we did all this. We're not going to also buy new ones. So that's kind of their stance on that. A lot of the other things are Myron's work, and they certainly were our partner in helping us for those 6 weeks that we were not in that school and continue to help us through this process. So we had to file what's called a delay of completion, which is exactly what happened. We were supposed to be done August 31st and didn't get in there until October 10th. So that part of that is still happening. There's some small claims above, mostly on supply kinds of things. No kidding, I didn't count the sheets of paper, but I can tell you it was about that thick of receipts of just stuff, teachers' materials, books, whatever that we had. We have to account for it item by item. from what they had an inventory company come in and look at everything. We also had some things that we didn't realize were missing or damaged until we moved back into the space. So I'm working through that process as well. So everything on the upper part has been, we'll be getting a check for, has been claimed if we haven't received the check yet. About $31,000, this number right here is outstanding yet, and that we're working through line by line on an invoice of what we ordered. Here's what the value was that we're gonna give you, here's what you bought, here's the difference. Line by line, pages, I can't even tell you, so. For the
That's
smallest
the stuff that
part
were the
of the claim.
teachers, like my fan got broken, so they got to go buy a new fan, and they didn't tell us ahead of time that they were gonna need that alignment, and
Good thing is, Carly was tracking it for the most part that way, so we'll be able to put it on a spreadsheet. Originally, you wanted me to put the line item from their inventory on each invoice by each line. I said, no, there's gotta be a better way. I'm not gonna go back and do that. Because we've accounted for it in a separate location. We know what we bought. We know what we had on the list to buy. So anyways, so we're working through that process, but right now that's about 1.4 million, and again, we have about 15,000 of that is a deductible expense, so.
And we won't get stuck with any of those things that you're still arguing about.
Hopefully not. That is it. We have not paid any of these down below with the Myron PCIs, they call them. So we have not paid any of this yet, but we're working through that with them. Any questions on any of that? And we had 4 buckets of insurance. I don't know, we had the property, we had the contents, we had what's called extra expenses, and we had the builder's risk. So it's not, it's 2 different companies too. So.
So like how much so far?
I'm sorry.
So the payments received is 1.3 million.
Correct.
And
we've spent 1.45. Yep.
So 150,000.
Right here, about 113. I know I'll be getting a check for 77,000 in the next week or so for some of these other items that are up above. That's not on. That's all I had on that.
All right, any other questions on the facility update? Otherwise, I'm assuming, Jill, this is you for the next couple here, audited financial statements.
Yeah, so you can see the next 3 agenda items are kind of dipping our toe into 3 years at this point in time, right? I gave this all to you in your packet. I'm obviously not going to go through our audited financial statements. I can tell you our audit went well. We have no findings, we have no question costs. Those are kind of the 2 big things that we always worry about. We did grow our fund balance by $143,000 at the end of last year. That's also a number we look at, which is 21% of Fund 10 expenditures, which is board policy. Fund 50, our food service fund, they had an increase in the fund balance of $339,000, and so their new net position is $977,000. So food service has been doing really well during these times, and they're doing some improvements. So at the high school, as you know, one of the projects, we're putting a new dishwasher in, and they're using some of those dollars to do things like that. So improving some of their capital assets as well. The probably most important piece for you, so most of this is notes to the financial statements explaining 3 pages, right? Most important thing to you was the required audit communications to the board. So again, talking about the different things, we had no findings, we had no material weaknesses. They talk about a new GASB statement 96 that we're going to have to comply with now this year. So another statement, this one is about software subscriptions that we're going to have to track and just put on the books. I mean, we don't really do anything different. We just have to track it and provide those numbers to the auditors so that they can do up a schedule about it for our financial statements. They talked a little bit about the food service accounts receivable at the end of last year. The negative balances were, the total lunch balance was about 34,000. That is the negative balances. And talked about our evaluating those for collectability, going through and keeping up with our policy, sending those to collections if we feel that's adequate. And in some cases, we have to write those off too. So, and they would like to see us to do that more quickly.
Do you hold a bad debt against that accountable, the accounts receivable for lunches? Do you have a bad debt allowance in there?
We do have a bad debt allowance,
Okay.
yes, we do, but it's not as much as the auditors would like us to have. This year though, go ahead.
And that has to be from Fund 10.
Correct.
That's what I just wanted to be clear.
Oh, I'm
So,
sorry, yeah.
Yes, that's what I
Fund
just wanted to
50.
clarify.
Yeah.
And so that Fund 50, we're watching that balance grow. We cannot use that to pay off the bad food service debt that is we can't. And then the second part I just wanted to mention was that, and I lost it. Oh, when you look at that food service account grow, you might think, well, why do we charge so much for the food that we are serving? If we lower lunch prices, perhaps we wouldn't be growing that balance. Connie has lots of rules and regulations that we can't like there's all kinds of regulations with the meals that she has to meet and how much the gap can be between cost and price charged, all of those things. And so I just wanted to be clear, we're not purposely growing this. I wish we could use that to pay off the bad debt, but they make you must use your Fund 10, our general operating, to pay off any bad debt.
So that would just be a transfer from Fund 10 to Fund 50 to zero that negative
Correct.
debt?
Correct.
So it would be a line item
no
in
real
10 is
benefit
what
to
we'd
the
have.
district anyways.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Yep.
Sorry to
So
interrupt.
we are we'll be writing some of those off. I think a total of anybody under $100 negative was $2,500 or $3,500. I'm throwing that out there, but it's not a lot. Then the other thing that they talk about is journal entries. I want you to know a lot of those journal entries that were in the back are ones that we identified before they even came. But because we had already sent them the trial balance and all of those things, they make us record them separately. It's tough when we have our audit the second week in July. We don't have all of our invoices. We're still doing payroll. We write back some of those costs and payroll back into the prior year. So it looks like a lot, but really it's not. They're just, some of them are cleanup and some of them are because we didn't even have the invoice yet to pay, but we need to put it back into the prior year. So the other thing I got today, which was not in your packet, is I just got this today from the auditors. It's the state single audit, and this gets sent to the DPI as well. So this is anything over $250,000 at any single program, federal or state, has to have its own single audit, which just means that they dig into it a little bit more. They look at all the receipts, they look at all the invoices. So, and that was well. There were no deficiencies. They actually call us a low-risk auditee in this as well. So that is all I had for you. Did you have any questions on?
And we've been told that it's best practice to have the board formally accept those audited documents, and so that's why we decided we haven't always done it this way. We usually do it during the annual meeting with the one-page letter, but it was suggested that that be formally approved by the board.
So I will move that we accept the audited financial statements as presented by Jill.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Current year budget revisions.
Yeah, so the next thing on the agenda is the 22-23 school year, so our current fiscal year. These are just reflecting, we wanted to get all of our grants up to date. We've had a lot of changes with the amounts and truing them up, so that detail page is probably the easiest. So the AGR, which you just heard about, just truing up that grant amount that we'll receive from the state, and also Title I, Title IIA, the 21st Century Learning Communities, we received an additional grant award of $54,600, so we wanted to add that in here as well. And then some changes in our IDEA flow through and preschool grants. Just again, we estimate those at the beginning of the year, and we find out the actual allocations in January, and just wanted to true those up. We'll do this again at the end of the year with other budget changes that we might have. So I would just look for, unless you have any questions, I would be looking for a motion from the board to approve this, and then what we do, we publish it in the paper as well. So.
I'll make that motion to approve the budget revisions as presented.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and second for the discussion. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, and then now, past, present, and future budget review, budget center allocation for next year.
This gets really complicated, really complicated. Because there is no biennium budget, just to be clear, right? There's so many unknowns right now.
Right, so that's a challenge of school finance in February of the prior year. We don't get, as you know, all of our factors until September and October of the fiscal year that we've already spent 4 months in. So when we're trying to do some forecasting and don't have any biennial budget amounts known, it's really hard for that first year. If we were to take our 2% salary, our a 9% increase in health insurance, which is our max, by the way, we are trending better than that, so that's good in the co-op. And then a 0 per pupil revenue limit, a 0 per pupil categorical aid, and then continue our 30% reimbursement for special education aid, we would have a budget deficit of $797,000. And that's not that we've done anything wrong, right? That's just how the revenue limit formula works, based on our factors for enrollment, which you can see above. It's only slightly declining for that 3-year average, and the per pupil categorical aid is $742.
And just to be clear, that is with a 2% salary increase, and CPI is right now at 8%.
So that is worst case with those assumptions, okay? Moving along, kind of, okay, what if we got 100, 200 in the per pupil categorical aid, everything else stayed the same? We would cut that deficit by about $166,000, okay? Moving along, just to keep giving you ideas about different scenarios. So what if our health insurance is only a 6% increase instead of the 9, and we still had a 0? But our special education aid, which is actually what's in the governor's proposal, is reimbursed at 60% instead of 30. Well, now we have a surplus of $517,000. That is how much different just the special education aid reimbursement would be for us.
And just, does everyone understand, I'm sorry, just going to make sure everyone understands what that special ed reimbursement looks like. Could we just talk through that process, what we get from the state?
Sure, so the flow through and the idea flow through and the idea preschool, those two amounts that I just kind of went over in the last piece there, those amounts are in Fund 27. Those are the entitlements we get from the federal government. Every special education cost that we have has to be coded to Fund 27, okay? Those two entitlements have their own costs then associated with them too. We code some people to them. Mostly we include contracted services or supplies, things like that. The rest still has to be coded to Fund 27, but we have to transfer funds from Fund 10 to make up that difference. On any of our Fund 27 costs that are not covered by a grant, by a federal grant, we get state special education aid to an amount, but then the difference has to come from Fund 10. So I said that backwards. We get state special education aid, but it doesn't fully cover all those costs in Fund 27 that aren't grant funded. Then we also have a transfer from Fund 10 that has to make up that difference. Right now our transfer is around $2.9 million, almost $3 million comes from Fund 10.
In addition to our Fund 27 grants that we get, our entitlements, that much comes out of our Fund 10 where we have maximum flexibility where we can use it and needs to offset the rest of that special education cost. So, sorry, I'll let you go ahead.
No, that's okay. So if I change that reimbursement, instead of only getting 30% of our special ed costs reimbursed, changing it to 60%, we now have a budget surplus of $517,000.
So all these three scenarios are obviously, they're unknowns.
Correct.
at this time. You won't know that till July.
But here's a part of why we're talking about this. So everybody has the ability to advocate with elected officials. The biennium budget is a very political process. Advocacy, when you listen to my professional organization, they're trying to get all districts to advocate for the same things so that it becomes easier for legislatures, elected officials to recognize, if I want to fund schools, here's a way I can help the most schools. So our legislative advisor always says, get the most for the most is that philosophy. And so every single district is positively impacted by increasing the amount of special ed reimbursement, right? We would be very positively impacted if they brought the low revenue ceiling up because we're a really low spender. So we would benefit there, but there's districts across the state that won't benefit from there. And so when they talk about what is their greatest point of advocacy, it is the special education reimbursement. When the three-legged stool was first created, it was supposed to be 2/3 funding, and the state has never been close to 2/3 funding of special education costs. So why even talk about this one? So that if you find yourselves with an opportunity to do any advocacy, you recognize what an incredible $780,000 hole to some funds that we can do something with.
So then, also, I wanted to show you, maybe you've heard about the different provisions of the governor's proposal for the budget. So I just wanted to give you a glimpse of what that looks like as well. In this first scenario, again, here's 23-24, again, using the 2% salary, 9% health. The governor's proposal talks about $350 the first year per pupil in the revenue limit, and also $450 in the low revenue ceiling. So Black River Falls was tapped out. We were a low spending district, and we used that low revenue ceiling for a couple of years to be able to increase our revenue limit. So this would also give a little bit growth in that low revenue ceiling. And then the per pupil categorical aid was only $24 per pupil as well. This one is using 30% special education aid, not the 60, just trying to give you different scenarios so you can see the the challenge that we have trying to predict this year. I mean, it's really, I think, different than no other. Because we know that there's that budget surplus out there at the state, but we just don't know how much we're going to receive of that. So this resulted in a deficit of $350,000. If I go ahead and apply all the same factors I just said and 60% special education aid, we are talking $878,000 surplus based on the governor's budget proposal. And you can see what happens as well in the future years. In these other ones, they assume we're using fund balance to take care of any deficits that we might have. So that cuts into our fund balance as well. But this one, it would help us in future years as I project those forward. Trying to find, okay, where might we be? What might be a realistic one? It's maybe not the governor's proposal, right? So looking at a 2% salary, a 6% increase in health, using $200 per pupil on the revenue limit, $200 on the low revenue ceiling, allowing that to grow, the $24 on the per pupil categorical aid, which is that per pupil amount outside the revenue limit, and using a 45% special education aid. Now we're at a surplus of $97,000. So going from $790,000 deficit, worst case scenario, right? Mm-hmm. To a surplus of $97,000.
That 2% salary is just not going to be enough.
Just what is it? The Fund 27. What is that estimated annual budget just of that fund? I mean, because I know you get grants to obviously offset the cost of it. But I was just out of curiosity because we're talking about 30%, 60% of what? I mean, dollar amount approximately.
Sure, we supplement the 2.9.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, I just saying what is the overall?
I don't know if I have that with me.
I mean, just a rough estimate. I mean,
$4 million.
$4 million. Okay, that's because out of the general fund, that's 25% of it. The Fund 10, I should say, right? Of just by itself, and then that's why it's such a big.
Correct. That's why it's such a big swing for Fund 10. Yep.
On the mill rate per thousand, on 21, it's 794, and then 23, it's 576. Why is
Yeah.
that fluctuating?
So at this point, I haven't really looked at the tax levy or the rate or the equalization aid. More looking at the revenue limit and what total funds we'd have available to us between those two sources.
What drives the mill rate up and down?
What drives the mill rate up and down is our property value, the larger property value we have. If there's more equalization aid and property tax levies going down as well, that's going to drive that too.
So it's not something that just is steady.
No. We've managed it the last several years. It could have been a little bit lower, but we've chosen to do the defeasance in Fund 39, which is our debt service, and pay that debt off more quickly to save interest by doing that.
Which allowed us to do that second referendum without an impact to that number because we have used that defeasance opportunity.
So what was our current special ed aid? That means what we're getting for.
That's what he was asking.
Our current,
no, but I mean percent.
Oh,
30.
30. We are currently funded at 30%.
It was, over the years, it's been 24 for a long, long time, and 26 and 28 at the last biennium it went to 30.
And so we are struggling to put together a budget for you because you can see just how erratic all of these things can be. And so that's going to cause problems, right? Because if we have a $787,000 hole, there's no way we can fill that without a reduction in staffing. It just can't happen with that dollar amount. There's a timeline for reduction in staffing statutorily, and I don't think we're going to buy any budget balance before that timeline comes around. And so the admin team has looked at the worst case scenario, and then last week Wednesday the governor put out his proposal, DPI has put out their proposal, but neither of them get the final say, right? It is a heavily negotiated, I don't even know what I would call it, but neither one of them get the final say. And so this leaves us in a really bad spot, right? I just was talking to our executive director last week and I said, do you think by summer? And because there have been years when we've been in September, October. Like Jill said, we're 4 months into that year before we even know what our budget is. And so he said because of the considerable surplus, he's optimistic that it'll be a June. June is well past our timeline for any staff reductions. And so honestly, we feel like we'll keep watching as we start seeing where things are going. And it might be a year where we're going to have to rely on some fund balance, because I'm going to add one more really, really complicating factor to this. All of those ESSER funds, we're in our last year of those ESSER funds. And so we already know that we are overspent from our Fund 10 budget because of all those positions that we put into ESSER. Those dollars have to be expended by September 30th, 24, so the end of next school year. So we may have a budget shortfall this year and then a massive decrease next year when the ESSER goes away, or we may have a surplus this year and then the ESSER funds go away. And so there's just so many unknowns that we think it's still prudent for us to look at reprioritization, see if there's any things that we can identify as changes. But we also think it might be a year to look at leaning on our fund balance, knowing that next year is going to be rough as we pull out of the ESSER, but at least we'll have a biennium budget. We'll know what our funding is going to be for those 2 years, because this gap is just too great to try to solve. That's not a formal recommendation. I'm saying we're struggling, and we of course love to have one of the more positive scenarios. We did find out that our health insurance percentage we should know by second week in March, right? So that will become finite, and that'll be helpful because that's a big player in this as well. So, would you mind showing that other chart? I put it in there. I can't remember what number, that's the one, there we go. So I heard you mention that, CPI is not going to be enough. So this is just something that was put together to show the annual revenue limit increase per pupil from 09 to 2023. So what you're looking at, the red, are the actual increases to school funding each year, and then the black was if those were tied to inflation. So inflation increases are the black, and the red are actual new dollars that schools have been given to try to keep up with inflation. And so I hear it when people say, why can't you live within your means?
Look at it.
Because we pay more for food, we pay more for gas, we pay more for heat, we pay more for tables, we pay more for computers. Inflation increases everywhere, and it's not okay to be on the backs of staff salaries, is what it boils down to. So this chart was part of a greater article that I can certainly forward the whole article to you, but you can see how many years that inflation moved significantly and the per pupil funding simply did not. So. Questions about that? Just wanted to share that with you.
So the one thing we did need action on tonight is, or would like action on, I'm sorry, are the school building budget centers. It's really helpful. It's on our calendar for budget development. It's really helpful we set those this time of year so that the building principals can start working with their staff in creating their building budgets. We're not looking for any increase per pupil. We're looking for those to stay the same. A lot of math down here, but what happens is the high school actually goes down a little bit in their budget. It's all based on enrollment. What we estimated for this year, what they were given, what actually happened, and what we're estimating for next year, kind of the factors. And so the high school would actually go down by 3,100, middle school would go up by 492, Red Creek would go up by 2,200, and 4th Street would go up by 1,800. And again, driven by the enrollments in their buildings. So the total increase for school building budget centers is $1,400. So that was the one recommendation we did have for tonight.
I'll make a motion to approve the school building budget center allocations as presented.
I will second that. Further discussions or questions? All right, all those in favor? Aye. All right, more financial stuff. The policy subcommittee is almost exclusively the financial end of things. We do have some school wellness and animals on school grounds. This is second reading, so we're looking for action on these tonight. If there's any to pull out, we can do that. Otherwise, I'd like to just do these by consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to accept the policy revisions.
Okay.
I have one question on that, on one policy. I mean, we don't have to pull it out or anything like that. I just wanted to ask, since Jill's here this week. I believe it was 6:30.
Management?
Yeah, it was, I'm looking it up right now. So. I had it on my computer at home, but of course, it was not on this, it's not on our sheet this month. That's why I can't find it.
Which one, Troy? I'm sorry.
6:30.
Yeah, if you have
Debt
6:30.
management.
Yeah, what's that?
It's in there.
There was the one that changed. Yeah, is it in here? Okay.
Should be. You put up on the screen. You're
I'm trying to.
Okay, sorry.
Yep.
Maybe I blind.
8.6.1.
Is that what it is? Okay. Thank you. This is 458.
0.11, I'm sorry, 8.6.1.11.
Okay. Yeah.
I found it.
It just changed. It's because we're consolidating. My main question was we're consolidating 3 or 4 policies into one policy. Is that correct on that one? And the reason I'm saying is because we changed the budget year. As far as
Not into 6:30.
not 6:30. Okay.
6.
Which one is the one we changed? The verbiage changed. I just had a clarified question. Somebody asked me, like, are they changing?
So annual operating budget policy 620 has been expanded significantly, and has eliminated 622, that just declares the fiscal year, and 624 budget implementation, and 625 fund transfer authority. All those three went away, and
we're just going to one new policy.
it's not new. It's
I should say it's a.
Yep. So it already existed, and now we're adding more smaller policies to it. Yep.
Confirmation on that. That's all.
Yep. Okay. We talked just a little bit about it at the policy committee, that sometimes when policies are so drilled down specific, like that one was like 2 sentences. Like if we're looking for policy on something, you look at it, you find it, and you read it, you're like, oh, it doesn't talk about that, so there must not be a policy or whatever, you know. And so then you don't necessarily realize. So putting them all in one spot, then if I need something about budget management, it's all in one spot, and it just seems easier to locate for people. So.
Yeah, but and we did it. Right?
Yep.
We did a second then right now, Brad?
Yep, we have a motion, looking for a second.
Okay, I can second it, yeah.
All right, further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we're into the 9 series. We have meeting minutes to approve. And I believe was that just January, is that correct?
I believe so. Special meeting.
Oh, and special, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
January and
there is a
special.
special
Okay,
one.
there were 2 in January. Any amendments to those minutes?
Make a motion to approve those minutes as presented.
You want to vote together?
Unless you have any changes, they can go together.
Yeah. Is that both of those?
That's all of them.
Yep. I'll second. All right, motion and a second. Again, this is both of those meeting minutes. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, district admin report.
All right, I have 2 short things, and then Red Creek is back up again. I just want to let you know that John Thoreau is working on a program. It's called All Kids Bike, and it is like a fundraising initiative. They're trying to get striders for all of the kids over at Forestry. The total fundraising goal is like $6,000 that they are reaching for. He and his wife put together, I think it was a painting event where they kind of kicked it off and started a little bit. But there's another one of those big family fun activities scheduled for this spring, perhaps between the parking lots between the 2 elementary, and so we thought we would do some brainstorming, see if we could set up some kind of a fundraiser there to help with that. Then also telling you that, remember, through the servant-led community, the grant that was going to hire the community health worker, tomorrow we are interviewing for that. So excited to see that get some legs and start moving forward. And take it away, Brandon and Rachel.
Hi again.
Before we knew this aligned with the AGR, if you guys remember, we had talked about the fact that you never hear from the principals. So we agreed each month that we were going to have a building, and they're up. So.
All right. I don't know about you, I'm sick of talking about budgets. So we are here to talk a little bit about some things that are going awesome at Red Creek, and maybe a couple other things too.
All right, so I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about Positive Action, which is an SEL program that our teachers are using to teach different character traits each month. And so to go along with those lessons that they teach in the classroom, the PBIS team also creates some school-wide activities. And so this month, the trait is respect. And so a few of the activities that we planned were that the staff would serve lunch on Valentine's Day to the students, which was great. They came over and helped. They filled the trays. The kitchen staff filled all the trays, and then the teachers went and delivered them to the students as they sat at the table, so they could work on manners and just kind of showing their love for the students. And then we're really excited about a day next week, which is Red Creek Roars with Respect Day on the 28th. And so it's a day focused on respect for yourself, respect for others, and respect for the school. And so to show respect for yourself, everyone's going to dress their very best to feel their best. The nutrition service staff is going to be serving a fancy brisket meal for us. We plan on setting up the lunchroom to look fancy, and we're going to work on lunchroom etiquette and what that should look like. And then respect, that would be part of respect for others, and respect for the school, reinforcing we want our school to always look its best, and cleaning up messes and taking care of those things and all that. So we're really excited about that day. And next month is Grit, is what our focus is, and it's just in time for state testing. So students will be working on the character trait crit. Okay. And to go along with that, so each month, as we're working on those different character traits, the teachers nominate a student in their class who displays that character trait, and we celebrate them at the end of the month with a Top Tiger breakfast. And so you can see there, they get a special breakfast. They're recognized amongst all of their peers. They get little brag tags to put on their backpacks with their picture on it. And so it's just a really fun event to celebrate their hard work all month.
If you watch social media, you see a lot of parents take a picture of their child with their ticket and all of that stuff celebrating. So.
One of our other character traits was wellness that we did through November and December, and then in January to celebrate, we did an activity where students and staff came together for an assembly, and we did some friendly competition. The students did a wellness bingo challenge, so each day there was a different wellness activity that they had to do in the classroom, and if they completed the wellness challenge, then they could mark it on their bingo board. And the first classes to get a bingo then earned their place at the assembly to compete against the staff. The staff also had a wellness challenge. We were all put together into teams and competed for wellness minutes. And so the winning teams, staff teams, and the winning student teams competed, and it was a great, fun event to celebrate. And then another fun activity we did, so our Red Creek Tiger Council. So those are students who are nominated in the classroom by the classroom teacher. They all kind of do it a different way, who they want to be a part of our Tiger Council. The Tiger Council gets together and just decides on different activities that happen in the school, dress-up days and other fun events. And so one of the things that they did this year was a cookie delivery to local businesses. And so all the teachers donated cookies. We boxed them up in the morning and then went out and delivered to local businesses along with cards and other things just to spread some holiday cheer. And we completed a penny war activity. We joined forces with Forest Street. I think there are a couple other organizations that participated as well. And so we were able to raise $2,612.11 to donate towards the All Abilities Playground that's going to be built at London Park. And so we were able to present that check at our Winter Family Night.
Maybe it's cashable, that big one. There. You can even slide it up the little thing that goes up.
All right, now.
It gets stuck, you know.
And speaking of our Winter Family Night, Brandon's going to go ahead and talk about that.
Awesome. So Mr. Berger talked a little bit about our family night that happened last week on Wednesday, February 15th. It was awesome. We had about 300 students show up. There were soups and fry bread prepared by Tony Pettibone through the JOM, or the Johnson O'Malley group. There was sledding, there was a snow snake built, there was snowshoeing. We partnered with Jackson in Action. A whole bunch of different organizations got together to put this together. There's snow painting pictures. Saw some of you there. If you saw any of the sliders go down the hill, they were cruising.
Yep.
They were really going, but they were having fun, and it was a little icy, which is why they were going. But all the parents were there, and they seemed to be fine with it. So more speed, more fun, I guess.
But the pond at the bottom slowed it down, so that was okay.
Right. Some of them cruised across the pond. Some of them not so lucky. But there were. Big shout out to Tony Pettibone and the JOM crew. The soups that they put together were amazing. They had 3 or 4 different kinds, including a chili and a fry bread. That was fantastic. We had a committee of people that really put this whole thing together, right down to renting an extra porta potty and renting out the Lunda shelters, both the bottom and the top. There were door prizes given out. It was a lot of fun, and we saw what great can happen when we add so many of these great organizations and put them together in one place and combine our efforts. So it was a lot of fun. So we wanted to give you a couple things that we're excited about. You saw earlier in the AGR presentation
our reading scores are really coming along. We're showing a lot of growth. This was basically what you saw before. So not everything is all fun and games over at Red Creek. We do work a little bit. So we wanted to highlight some of the academics that are going well, which from what I believe to be iReady reading achievement or reading achievement in general. iReady is just what we use to gauge it. Something to work on. Ooh, can you go back just one? A current challenge of ours is iReady math growth. You saw it again in the AGR stuff that we shared a little bit earlier. Math growth is our next focus, is our next thing to take down. Some of the things that we're doing, emphasizing mathematics instruction and engagement in small group and target time. Math curriculum, we have noticed while we're working through an adoption, one thing that we have realized is that good teaching is good teaching. And so sharing the good teaching strategies with those all around us is what's really going to give us our best bang for the buck. And Melanie actually hit on it a little bit in her presentation of the AGR 4th Street. Numbers and operation domain within mathematics, that's the one that we're really going to go after. At 4th Street, it's counting and you know, a little bit more basic. At Red Creek, it looks a lot more like fluency with math facts and critical thinking along the 4 operations of add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Another current challenge that we have is bus behaviors. If you rode the bus as a kid, you know probably a little bit what it can be like. Right now, so far this year, we have had 260 minor office discipline referrals and 29 major office discipline referrals. So approximately 290 or almost 300. We're on our 107th day of school, so that's about 3 per day of office write-ups that are happening on the bus. They range anywhere from getting up out of your seats to more physical contact. There's a lot going on, and there's only one adult riding that bus to try and keep it all under control while also safely getting these kids home. So it's a concern of ours, and so things that we're doing. We're reteaching bus behavior expectations. It is bus driver appreciation last week. And this Wednesday we will be reteaching expectations for all students. It follows that PBIS model that Mr. Nortman talked about and what we follow within the elementary schools. And it's the most widely accepted behavior model within the state and the nation is PBIS. So it's a common set of expectations, reteaching those so that every student knows exactly what is expected of them and what the consequence is going to be if you don't follow it. And when you don't follow it, this is how we're going to reteach you to do it right again the next time. We're going to be putting additional staff members on the buses. 4th Street has had a couple of riders so far this year that have taken the bus route home. We're looking to add people on 4 different routes, I believe, starting as soon as possible. And so I think just having another adult on the bus to help manage everything going on is going to be super beneficial to our students in a safe ride home.
We had some ride last week, and all of them that I had talked to said it went really, really well. And it was actually a really great opportunity for them to get to know the kids. They said the kids were super excited to sit there and have a conversation with them. They're like, they just wanted to talk to us. Yeah, exactly. They just want somebody to talk to. And their behaviors were way better, so we're hoping that this will help.
And so honestly, those extra riders are being funded by
That's what I was
the
gonna ask.
out of school time grant that Brandon and Nicole worked so hard on. And so we have that opportunity for a time, and then we lose that opportunity. So.
Just we'll fix it all before the Any questions for us?
Just an idea on that. What if like one of the teachers or aides or whatever lived on that route and then just got picked up and hauled to school and hauled home?
Think of the gas money saved.
I mean, would that be like, wouldn't cost any money? Maybe I go on free things like Nicole said?
Yeah, it's a little bit tough because, you know, those bus routes start super early depending on how far away. Well, their contract hours only go so much, and then you'd have to add on to it, so.
Because they have meetings after school, and the teachers are there after the buses, they're there.
Right.
Yeah.
Forget all this
We
stuff.
keep dragging them down with meetings.
Oh, I've heard about them meetings.
I'm sure you have. They're free too, so come on along.
School board members also
Right to it.
Right, yeah.
All right, thank you.
We get to sing.
Thank you.
Like wheels in the bus around.
You can sing whatever song you like.
No,
Okay.
not any song you like.
Yeah.
I don't know Nick's
Wheels on
taste
the
in
bus.
music.
Oh. What else would I think of? You know?
And that is it for the district admin report.
All right, 9.3 WASB and other. Mary Jo Rajanowski has a write-up in the packet.
I sent one out, did you guys get that?
You sent it by email to
Yeah,
everyone,
that's
so I
right,
didn't
that's right,
print
yep.
it in there. I thought everyone got it.
Any other?
Well, I just want to say that as a representative of the assembly, that the resolutions, well, this was the first time, what did I say, 125, 135 years, whatever, we did not get through all the resolutions because a certain number of people, because of the length of it, left, so we didn't have a quorum. So that was the first time ever that we were not able to get through all of the resolutions, but the resolutions that we got through, every one of them passed except for the one to have school lunch, free school lunch, K through 12. I also attended a few sessions, and one of them, get his card out here, was very appropriate for what's going on here in our school, is that we are many united against hate. And I just wonder if it's some kind of program that we might want to consider. I'd have to talk with administration about that to see how that would go forward. That's about it, I guess. It was well worthwhile. Really enjoyed this, and I came home.
You went
with
at the
the
planned
group.
time. At the planned time.
Any other conference workshop attendance? Shelby, you went to your?
I wasn't sure that meant me. Yes,
Yeah,
I did.
that's-
I had some fantastic sessions. I went to one that was called Profile of a Graduate because, to be honest, it was very future focused in engaging community members around what is most important in a graduate to you and how that could align to your strategic plan and your measurement. It was fantastic. I went to one called Grading for Equity, and hold on to your hats. It was all about standards-based grading and how closely aligned that is to grading for equity. I went to, boy, what else did I see? Community engagement sessions, lots and lots of really great speakers, and the Orange Frog people were there, so I felt very excited to spend some time with them.
A couple things, I know I wrote it in my note to you guys, but I really think that signing of the Code of Ethics might be a good thing for us to do. Each year when we have a new board, everybody signs the Code of Ethics and agrees to what we're doing with those. And I thought an interesting idea was to have a board retreat every year to build trust and teamwork. That might be interesting.
Anything else?
Are those things that you would like on perhaps a special meeting agenda for further discussion?
We could talk about, yeah, I think so. And I'd like to share more and have you share about the Educators Rising group. I think that was really an interesting idea. Could help us.
Yeah, that could be during a board reorg in May. That would be good. We'll start talking about some of those items. All right, school board connection opportunities.
No, the musical is happening first weekend in March, and it is Beauty and the Beast. And there's a fantastic group of high school kids working really hard. And Amanda Lane, who is actually the wife of our choir director, is the primary director. She is our secretary in the counseling office and also a very fine musician. And there's also staff members that have been invited. So come Friday night and see a group of staff, come Saturday night and see Luke and I and a couple of, and Nicole, are you the same night?
I'm Sunday.
She's Sunday, there you go.
That's the night to come for afternoon.
We get to do some of the big numbers, to be our guest, and so super fun. Yeah, excellent. It's a great, really good group of kids working on it, so.
My son's doing the Shooting Tigers. That was last night, and there's a real nice group, a large group for that this year.
That team just keeps growing and growing and growing. That's awesome.
Yep. Fastest growing sport in the nation right now. Thursday is that right? Thursday is Mr. Pancake. I'm losing track. Mr. Pancake is this week. Thursday, 5 o'clock. Dr. Seuss is coming up in two weeks.
They're still looking for razors.
Yeah. I took my boys to the bus barn last week for Bus Driver Appreciation Week. They had way more fun than the bus drivers did. So. They're really excited about school buses. Any other future agenda items?
I'd like to, it's not necessarily any kind of action item, but I guess just kind of a concern about food waste and things on that end, and maybe some legal issues with the way we do things.
You have concerns about the way we do things, or you're
No,
wondering
if
we
there
can-
are,
Okay.
if things that we do are proper.
Okay.
You know, and maybe there are regulations that affect some of the things with food.
Perhaps when we prepare that piece, you could give Jill or I some details so we can talk to Connie about it, because
Sure.
I don't know that I would be able to speak to a lot of those processes, Jill.
Connie.
Yeah, we'll need Connie. Perfect.
One thing I was wondering, like, on the board minutes, whatever, used to have like action needed on items, which seemed like was kind of helpful. Is there some?
So when we went to fall WASB, we talked about that, and the attorney said that that was not advised. It was his comment. It's not wrong. It's not right. His comment was, it's not advised because it limits the board from being able to take action if you want to. So that was his advice at that meeting. Mary Jo, and Brad and I were all there.
Just seemed like it was kind of a useful tool, the stuff that was like we're going to talk about or stuff that we had to make a decision on. Yeah.
I can certainly put it in our notes where the ones that we absolutely need action on,
Right.
if that would be helpful. Okay.
Anything else? All right. At this time, I move that the school board will adjourn to closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 19.85 subpara 1 subpara C for the purpose of considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, and for the purpose of discussing administrative contracts.
We need roll call to go in.
Yeah, we also need a second.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Second.
Now we do roll call.
Will we get an adjournment for 10 minutes before then?
We'll take recess, yeah.
We'll take a recess. Okay.
Mary Jo Rosmanowski, Mary Jo Radcliffe,
Yes.
Nick Helsted,
Yes.
Tom Epps,
Yes.
Troy Webb,
Yes.
Ann Deemer,
Yes.
Brad Dobbs.
Yes. All right, and we'll take a recess here so everyone can use the restroom, and then we'll come back into closed session.